Chapter 16, Virtual Reality, 4. Although this was all simulated through a computer, I couldn't help but be mesmerized by the scene before me. Crystalline clear water that neatly reflected the incoming rays of light coming from the sun, and vibrant green vegetation, surrounded the calm lake. Animals could be seen peacefully sharing their surroundings with the other animals as they each slowly drank the crystal clear water from the lake. "Oh. You're here, Patrick." Snapping me out of my reverie was a high-pitched male voice coming from the right. "Oh, Lucas, you're here. I got the perfect man for the job." Waving towards the direction from where the voice was coming from, a boy that looked to be about 14 years of age showed up. His curly hair was a mixture of brown and blonde color, and accompanied by his green emerald-like eyes, made him resemble an elf. He looked rather lively and seemed to get along with Patrick quite well. "Oh. Is that him?" Noticing my presence, the young boy scanned my body up and down and cheerfully smiled. Extending his hand, he smiled. "Rank 429, Lucas time." Soon a screen appeared before me. Extending my hand to shake his hand, I smiled and presented myself. "Pleasure to meet you, rank 1750, Rendover." Clap. Clap. Clap.
"Oh."
"I have never seen someone as lowly ranked as you." After shaking my hand, Lucas excitedly clapped his hands and looked at Patrick. "Patrick, you're absolutely right. He is indeed the perfect man for the job." I was quite fortunate. Tilting my head, I looked at Lucas and Patrick, who were both happily conversing with one another. "Excuse me? But you guys keep saying that I'm the perfect man for the job, but what exactly am I supposed to do?" "Oh. Patrick didn't tell you?" Tilting his head, Lucas alternatively looked at me and Patrick for a couple of seconds, before seemingly having realized something. Soon a wide smile appeared on his face. "Oh, I see, okay, then I will explain it to you." Pointing towards the center of the lake, Lucas looked at me. "You see over there?" Looking in the direction where he pointed, I squinted my eyes so that I could get a clear look at what he was pointing at. After a couple of seconds, I could make out what seemed to be a small lily pad with a red flower neatly nested on top of it. Because it was so small, if it weren't for the fact that Lucas pointed it out for me, I probably would have never been able to notice it. "Yes, I see it." "Okay, so in short we need the flower on top of that lily pad in order to get the extra points." I already kind of get the gist of the situation. If this was how I suspected things were, at the center of the lake there was a large monster guarding the flower. Because Patrick and Lucas's strength was not too different, they decided to get someone who was weaker than them and force them to become bait, while reaping the rewards for themselves. On the off chance that I survived the ordeal, they'd later kill me to keep the reward for themselves. You see, there's a large monster inside of the lake, and so we needed someone who could help us be bait so that we can freely get the flower. So predictable. So very predictable. Was this why third-rate villains always died first? Smiling, Lucas looked up towards my face, while Patrick went behind me. Noticing the situation, I lightly sighed and said, "Can I say no?" "Why would you say no?" Tilting his head in confusion, Lucas looked at me once again. "Shouldn't dogs eat whatever their owners are feeding them?" There it is. His true personality finally showed up. There was no way Lucas was some random brat that acted like a child. He was definitely a two-faced scheming bastard that would resort to any trick to get what he wanted. I'm fairly certain Patrick was being fooled by him as well. In the first place, you can only get 1 point from completing a hidden task. How could you share 1 point? Thus, the mastermind behind this whole thing was fairly obvious. If I'm not wrong, once Lucas gets rid of me, his next target would be Patrick. By backstabbing him when he least expects it, he could earn the extra point without needing to lift a finger throughout the whole ordeal. Truly a scheming bastard. At least I know who to target first. Okay, not like I can fight you guys anyways. Humph, good choice. Clap. Clap. Clap.
Yay!
Now we can get the extra points. Bitterly smiling, I nodded my head, to which Patrick sneered and Lucas smiled and clapped. Okay, let's go. Excitedly rushing forward towards the lake, Lucas prepared to directly jump into the lake. Stop. Before we start, I need a few things. Even though I am bait, I want to increase the chance of me surviving even if it's a little bit. Stopping himself from jumping in the lake after hearing my shout, Lucas contemplated for a few seconds before nodding his head. I guess a good owner needs to reward their pet for their obedience. Okay, tell me, what is it that you need? Nothing much. Clack. Ha. Clink. Thud. Thud. G-A-A-A-W-H. Goo-you-you-you-you. Two dreadful screams resounded across the forest, scaring the nearby animals away. 3 seconds. Staring at the katana in my hand, which was dripping with blood, I shook my head in disappointment. Although I was only about halfway towards reaching the minor realm of mastery, in the week I stayed in the academy I diligently trained my sword for 4 to 5 hours a day. I managed to reduce the time taken for me to sheath and unsheath the sword from the scabbard, but it seems like I was still very far from reaching the point where the sword became invisible. Looking beneath me, the bodies of Lucas and Patrick, who were both still alive, squirmed on the floor. Both their legs had gone missing. Although the pain reduction in the VR world was reduced to 50%, the pain of losing both limbs was still something that no one would find pleasant. The reason why they were like this was simple: they let their guard down. Although yes, I technically was indeed stronger than both of them, that was only on an individual level. If I was to face them both at the same time, the chances of me winning was only at around 40%. I took advantage of their arrogance and chose the most appropriate moment to strike, which happened to be when they turned their backs on me and felt like they had me in the palm of their hand. Why cut off their legs and not kill them? Well, that was simple really. I myself was in need of some good bait. Since you want to take advantage of me, I'll make sure you pay the appropriate price. Like I said before, I take my grudges deeply. Well, look who decided to do me a favor. Looking down at both Patrick and Lucas, whose faces were grimacing in pain due to the loss of their limbs, I smiled. Kook, I'll kill you. How dare, Kuha, dog, do this to me? It's not my fault you guys were stupid enough to actually leave your back exposed to me. This happens every time. Whenever someone hears my rank, they automatically think I'm garbage. The rank given to students was determined through measuring potential, stats, and academic achievement, in this case, through the entrance exam. Students tend to forget, but in the beginning, ranks were pretty much useless. Initially, for most of the students who enrolled in the academy, although they had different ranks, the gap in strength between the bottom-ranked students and the middle-ranked students was about the same. Well, that was at least for anything above 300. For ranks between 1 and 300, the strength gap between each rank was quite significant. In the story, it was only after the first half of the year had passed that ranks become a more accurate estimation of someone's strength. In this case, Lucas and Patrick misjudged my strength because of my rank, and thus were both easily taken down by me. Cow, KH, Ard. Oh. Sorry, did you say something? Leaning my ear next to Lucas's mouth, I imitated Lucas's childish accent. Bastard. Provoked by my taunt, Lucas tried to bite my ear, but I swiftly leaned my body back and avoided his teeth. Shaking my head as I looked at them, I stared at the lake before me. You know, from the moment I saw Patrick I knew he was an idiot. Kuawak. I'll fucking kill you. I mean, did you seriously think you could share the hidden task? Exclamation point. Looking at Patrick's surprised face, I raised my eyebrow. You actually didn't know you couldn't share the reward? TSK, 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 no wonder you're an idiot. What are you, talking about? Lucas sigh, D that you could. Smiling widely, I looked at Lucas. Is that so? Don't listen to him, Patrick. He's Meryl, kook. Trying to get to your mind. PFFFF, are you even listening to yourself? Why would I need to get to his mind when he's already disabled? Moreover, why would you even trust someone who is not even in your group? Looking at Lucas, who had gone pale, Patrick clenched his teeth and stared at Lucas with hatred. Is what he said true? And no. Did you lie to me? Answer me. Clenching his teeth, Lucas's previous cheerful demeanor vanished completely, as he stared at Patrick like he was looking at a bug. So what if I lied to you? Ado, KHG only needs to follow orders and not a questions. I'll kill you. Using his hands to drag his big body forwards, Patrick tried to force himself onto Lucas. Clap. Alright, show's over. I haven't got too much time to deal with you guys, so please just be good. Clapping my hands once, I grabbed the back of both Lucas's and Patrick's shirts, before dragging their legless body towards the lake. Cock, reel, ASE me. Let go of me. Ignoring their protests, I stopped right before the lake and looked at them. Make sure you create as much of a scene as possible. Guawa.
No.
Splash. Splash. Alk, SPHH. You. BAS, SPHH, ARD. Since they both had missing limbs, the only thing they could do to stay afloat was to use their arms by constantly hitting the water. There was a reason why I only decided to cut their legs. A good bait needs to create enough commotion to attract the prey. And sure enough, a minute after I threw both Lucas and Patrick into the lake, a large shadow appeared beneath them. Well, that's my cue. Splash. Diving into the water, I swam towards the flower which rested in the middle of the lake. As long as they both act as good baits, retrieving the flower shouldn't be a problem. And it was indeed just like I had predicted. While the lake guardian was busy enjoying its delicious food, I safely swam towards where the flower was located and easily brought it back to shore. It's kind of nice that things went just like I predicted. Looking at the red flower on the palm of my hand, I secretly rejoiced once again at the fact that I wasn't reincarnated as the protagonist. If Kevin were to have been the one who went to retrieve the flower, 9 times out of 10 the lake guardian would have spotted him and made things harder for him. Fortunately, such a thing won't happen to an extra like me. Let's get the extra point before anyone else has a chance to steal it from me. Squeezing the flower in my hand, the flower instantly turned into light particles that floated above my head. Rank 1750 Ren Dover plus 1 point, Lake Trial Team points, 5. Alright. Now even if I were to die, Arnold wouldn't give me crap for dragging the team down. Teammate Arnold Kane has died, team points, 4. PFFFF. Talk about a punchline. Just when I manage to get an extra point, that bastard goes and gets himself killed. Where was that high and mighty attitude from before? Make sure you survive, else. What a clown. He got what he deserved. I hope he doesn't start stuff with me for taking over his spotlight. Checking my watch to see how much time has passed, I nodded in satisfaction. Alright, I have completed my task, so all I need to do now is survive for 23 more minutes before I can go back to my dorm and relax. Chapter 17, Virtual Reality, 5. Teammate Park Jinho has died, team points, 4. Trash. KHHHKK, plea, SE. Crack. Swiping away the notification, Arnold clenched his hand and the sound of a neck-breaking spread across the surroundings. Thud. Useless garbage. Throwing away the lifeless body, which soon turned into light particles, Arnold's mood couldn't be any gloomier. What happened? Sitting comfortably on top of a large rock, a pale black-haired youth with yellow pupils spoke to Arnold with an amused smile. None of your business. Irritated by the youth's presence, Arnold grumbled and walked away. Hey, don't be so mean. Just because we are on top of a mountain and Jean isn't here doesn't mean you can ignore me like that. Jumping off the rock, the black-haired youth happily followed Arnold, further irritating him. If Ren was here, he would have immediately been able to recognize the identity of the man following Arnold. There was only one man in the whole academy who had yellow pupils. Rank 18 Troy Direx. A borderline psychopathic student who in the middle stages of the novel becomes an infamous villain. He, like Arnold, was one of the 3 lackeys that followed Jean, but unlike Arnold, who voluntarily chose to be his lackey, he had no choice but to become one. In reality, his father was a direct subordinate of Jin's father. Knowing that his son was approximately the same age as his boss's son, Troy's father, William Direx, forced Troy to get along with Jean even though he absolutely despised the man. Born with a golden spoon without needing to be forced to prostrate towards someone just because of their father's influence, or having a happy family that isn't on the verge of a breakdown because of an abusive father who only thinks about work. Jean had everything. He had what Troy didn't. Money, influence, power, and most of all a loving family. Consumed by his jealousy and hatred towards Jean, Troy got approached by Professor Thibault and was tempted into forming a contract with a demon. The demon clans were split into 7 clans, each according to the 7 heavenly sins. This may seem like some cliché story writing, but for Ren, who at the time was thinking of different ways to approach the concept of demons and villains, the 7 heavenly sins sounded like the most well-matched concept he could come up with. It was the perfect scenario that helped him portray the relationship between villains and demons. A villain was someone who made a pact with a demon when their desire overcome their rationality. For example, if you found yourself in despair towards a person who was far more talented than you, an emotion called jealousy would begin sprouting inside of you. Or when you see a really beautiful girl you want to make yours, what you experience is both greed and lust. Once you experience such emotion, it either subsides over a period of time or becomes stronger as the distance between you and the said target increases. And in this case, as your desire/negative emotion increases, the demon clan that is most compatible with you makes their appearance in the form of an agent and tempts you into making a deal with you in exchange for power. Jealousy, envy, hatred, wrath, possessiveness, greed, obsession, lust, all negative emotions fall into the 7 heavenly sins. Once a person experiences such emotions and lets it take over their rationality, only then will the demon tribe with the respective compatibility step in and present you with a deal. In Troy's case, who was in his own right incredibly talented, falls into an immense state of jealousy clouding all his judgments, resulting in the demon clan of envy to personally make a move. Because of Troy's immense talent, the envy clan directly approached him instead of contacting him through a clan sub-branch. A sub-branch, also known as a collection of minor tribes, was a collective of demons whose bloodline was more diluted compared to the main clans. A demon's rank was determined by their bloodline purity, ranked from king, prince/princess, duke, marquis, earl, viscount, and lastly baron. The higher the title, the stronger they were. With the demon king being the strongest. The consequence of having a more diluted bloodline resulted in the contractee being given a lower amount of power as compared to a contractee who had made a pact with a pure-blooded demon. Hence why Troy, who signed a pact with a pure-blooded demon of the clan of envy, becomes an extremely tricky opponent to face in the middle of the story. The reason why sub-branches existed was because a demon could only make one pact per human. Unless the human died or became stronger than the demon they made a pact with, the contract will never break. Because of the limited number of pure-blooded demons, only a select amount of humans could make a pact with them. Only the best and most talented humans could make a contract with them. If the human was not very talented, then the sub-branch would step in and offer them a contract. It has to be noted that a demon could never break a contract once it was made, as their soul was directly linked to the contract. If they forcefully tried to break the contract, they may be at risk of having their soul pulverized. In the end, only someone of Troy's level of talent could tempt one of the main clans to make a move. Stop following me. Oh, come on. Why do you want to get rid of me so badly? You know why. I told you many times already, it's not my fault she likes me better. Crack. Suddenly, Arnold stopped and the ground beneath his feet started cracking. Below his feet, countless minute crevices started extending from where he stood. With blue veins bulging out from the top of his head, Arnold turned around and glared in Troy's direction, who was leisurely walking behind him and coldly said, "Just because you are ranked higher than me, doesn't mean I won't hesitate to attack you here." Oh, chill out, man. I was only stating the truth. Raising his hands in a sign of surrender, Troy took a couple of steps back. Humph. Clenching his teeth, Arnold turned around and ignored Troy. It's not my fault I was born this handsome. I'll key, khhh. Roar. Suddenly, just as Arnold was about to lash out against Troy due to his stupid remarks, a large shadow emerged from behind a couple of rocks and pounced him. Raising his shield, which was his main weapon, Arnold barely managed to take the full grunt of the attack not before being pushed back 5 steps. Gook! A split second after he managed to stabilize his body, Arnold stared at the ferocious creature whose features started becoming discernible. Orange fur, muscular upper body, fangs that extended from its mouth to the upper end of its arms, and blood-red eyes. A beast that resembled the long-extinct, saber-toothed tiger. Fu didn't expect the famous D-ranked metal-fanged Smilodon to make its presence here today. This test sure is harder than I expected. Reading his stance, Arnold raised his shield and roared. Hoo! Provoked by Arnold's spirit, the metal-fanged Smilodon similarly roared and dashed towards him. Roar! Clang! The sound of a collision could be heard from the distance, as a flock of birds escaped from the nearby trees. As soon as the dust settled, 3 large claw marks appeared on Arnold's shield. However, if one looked carefully, Arnold remained rooted in the same spot he was before the clash. Gah! Bam! As the metal-fanged Smilodon tried to assault Arnold once again, Arnold dipped his body and shoulder tackled the incoming beast. Grah! Being tackled by Arnold, the metal-fanged Smilodon lost its previous momentum and felt its body being raised a couple of centimeters in the air. Boom! Taking advantage of the opening, Arnold swung his shield, in a punching motion, towards the beast's stomach, sending it flying towards a nearby tree. Thud! Back first, the metal-fanged Smilodon wailed in pain as its back crashed against a nearby tree. Hugh. With heavy breaths, Arnold stared in the direction where he sent the beast flying. Roar! Before Arnold had the chance to rest, he saw the metal-fanged Smilodon appear from the side of his view. Clang! Skillfully switching the shield to his left hand, Arnold felt a tremendous momentum being transmitted to his body, sending him staggering backward a couple of meters. Clang! Grew! Before Arnold could have a chance to catch his breath, the beast relentlessly attacked him from every direction. Basta, KHH, help me d.amit. Turning his head towards where Troy was leisurely standing, Arnold cursed as he kept on withstanding the continuous onslaught of attacks coming from the beast. Oh! So you can't hold it any longer? Clang! 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 KHH. I might AC, ka, Tuli huff, huff, die. Say please? Quick.
Ah.
Fine geez. Extending his right hand forwards, a bow suddenly appeared in Troy's hand. Pulling the string back, a translucent blue arrow suddenly materialized on the bow. Let's make this quick. Licking his lips, Troy closed his left eye and aimed at the tiger's head. Just as he was about to release the bowstring, suddenly a notification appeared in Arnold's view, completely stunning him. Your teammate rank 1750 ranked over succeeded in completing the hidden task, Lake Trial, awarded +1 point. Team points, 5. That one split moment of time where Arnold was stunned was enough for the beast to seize the opportunity and break through his defense. Wah, Ku. Affa. You have died. Rank 75 Arnold Kane has died, team points, 4. Those were the last words Arnold saw before his view suddenly became dark. Swoosh. Splat. Roar. Soon after Arnold died and his body turned into light particles, a blue arrow dug its way into the tired beast's eye. Swoosh. Swoosh. Thump. Before the beast could recover, 2 more arrows quickly dug their way towards where the first arrow hit, killing the beast completely. Phoo. Seeing the beast turn into light particles, Troy bitterly laughed. Oops. How are you guys holding up? Standing on top of a large boulder, Kevin looked behind him where a small group of people had gathered. Could have been better. Thud. Grumbling, Emma jumped off from the top of a tree. We should be safe for now, so let's get moving. Walking ahead of Kevin, Emma turned her attention to Amanda, who was a few meters ahead, quietly observing the area. What are you doing? Observing. Observing what? Everything. Letting out a sigh, Emma walked up to Amanda, whose face was expressionless, and hooked her arm around her fair slender neck. What am I gonna do with you? Startled by Emma's sudden action, Amanda looked at Emma in confusion. Finally, after noticing Emma's cheeky grin, Amanda realized she was messing with her and tried to free herself from Emma's arm. Let go. Let's see how strong the almighty Amanda is. Gripping even harder, Emma laughed as she enjoyed seeing Amanda's expressionless face slowly turn red due to what seemed to be either oxygen deprivation or anger. While Emma was busy annoying Amanda, some of the male students around them couldn't help but fix their sight on them. Seen enough? Leaning against a tree, Jean glared at the students who were mesmerized by the 2 girls playing around. He seemed to be in an especially bad mood today. Flinching, the students who were busy admiring the girls looked at Jean in fear. Overwhelmed by his glare, they hurriedly backed off. Kevin, who saw this scene from afar, couldn't help but lightly grin as he walked up to Jean. Still salty about your loss? TCH, you were just lucky. Clicking his tongue, Jean clenched his fists and looked away. Previously, Kevin and Jean were fighting to get the extra point from the hidden task. Their hidden task consisted of finding a certain flower that was located in the mountain region they had spawned. Because the task relied on pure luck, once he lost, Jean couldn't help but feel his mood plummet to the ground. If Kevin had managed to win based on his skills, then Jean wouldn't have made a big deal out of it, but since this win purely came from luck, Jean felt as if he was robbed. Unfortunately, rules were rules, and no matter how salty he was, he could do nothing about it. Excuse me. A slightly timid voice disrupted their conversation, prompting Kevin to turn around. Following his line of sight, a small timid young girl with adorably large eyes looked at both Kevin and Jean with a red face. Holding the edge of her shirt, her eyes drifted left and right as she struggled to find the right words to say. Looking at the adorable girl in front of him, Kevin couldn't help but chuckle. Yes? Quick, say what you need to say. Eek. Jean, who wasn't as patient as Kevin, immediately raised his voice, causing the young girl to lightly flinch. Oh Ichai, what was that for? Humph. Slightly glaring towards Jin's direction, Kevin looked back at the young girl and spoke in a kind tone. How can I help you? In a voice that was almost inaudible, the young girl looked at Kevin and said. I am in your team. Eh? Freezing for a split second, Kevin's smile momentarily faltered as he tried his best to remember the faces of his team members. Previously, when Kevin spawned in the waiting room, everyone kept their distance from him. Several factors may have caused his team members to avoid him. Most likely, due to their inflated ego, they couldn't help but become jealous of him, who displayed an astonishing level of talent despite coming from a poor background. Of course, this may not be the only reason as to why they ignored him, but Kevin wasn't too keen to find out. He was simply used to being alone. Chapter 18, Virtual Reality, 6. PFFF, you can't even remember the faces of your own teammates? Smirking, Jean mockingly looked at Kevin. Oh. So you're telling me that you remember the face of all your teammates? Raising his brow, Kevin turned around and skeptically looked at Jean. Turning around, Jean pretended to have not heard Kevin and walked away. Dumbfounded, Kevin helplessly looked in Emma and Amanda's direction, only to be left even more speechless. Swiftly moving around the trees, Emma was currently being chased by Amanda, whose face remained expressionless. Swish. 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 Taking out her bow. At an inhuman speed, Amanda's fingers danced between the bow and the quiver. Soon, 3 arrows flew in Emma's direction at a speed that couldn't be seen by the naked eye. Thud. 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 Stop. 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 I give up. Taking cover behind a tree, Emma raised her hands in defeat as she fearfully looked at the arrows that were imbued on the tree she was hiding. Each arrow perfectly penetrated the hard outer shell of the tree. Looking closely, the tip of each arrow was only a few centimeters from Emma's face, sending cold shivers down her spine. If it weren't for the fact that Amanda restrained herself, Emma might have actually died. Shaking his head, Kevin turned his attention back to the young girl, not before letting out a long sigh. He was starting to doubt whether grouping with them was the right thing to do. Maybe if Melissa was here things wouldn't have been as bad. Thought Kevin for a moment before shaking his head. Knowing Melissa's personality, things might have actually turned out for the worse. Sighing once again, and ignoring the commotion that Amanda and Emma were causing, Kevin squinted his eyes and took a good look at the girl before him. She was a beautiful, light-skinned young girl with a petite yet curvaceous frame and below-average height. She had long, slightly curly black hair that reached all the way to her back. Her large crystal eyes were slightly covered by short square bangs. She had plump rosy cheeks which, accompanied by her short figure, made one want to tightly squeeze them. Did you come to me to ask me to protect you? And no. Quickly shaking her head, the young girl timidly pointed towards another group of people in the distance. They said that they know where the hidden task was. Oh. Taking one good look at the members in the distance, Kevin was reminded of the people he had previously seen in the waiting room. Although he did not remember the young girl, he did remember 2 out of the 4 individuals gathered. They were the most arrogant and prideful of the bunch, so of course, he knew about them. If he didn't remember wrong, they should have been ranked around the hundreds and were extremely prideful of their ranking. They were so proud and arrogant that they thought that they could fight Kevin on equal terms. Like they all say, powerful people often grew confident, and confident people were often conceited. Power gets in the head of everyone. Kevin was no better, but because he had a clear goal, he managed to suppress his inner desires. Shaking his head, he walked towards them. Although he had no interest in interacting with them, since they knew where the location of the hidden task was, it was only natural that his interest was piqued. "Oh, by the way, what's your name?" Timidly looking down, the young girl avoided Kevin's eyes and swiped her hand right. Soon a screen appeared in front of Kevin. Equals 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 equals. User ID, Ava Leafs. Age, 16. Picture, holographic image. Program, Hero Program Year 1. School rank, 1078/2055. Potential, unranked. Profession, monster tamer. Equals 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 equals. Ava? Monster tamer? Touching his chin, Kevin looked at the information that was presented in front of him. Looking at the shy young girl once again, Kevin couldn't help but be slightly moved. If one asked Kevin which profession he thought was the strongest in the world, Kevin would without a doubt say the monster tamer class. Usually, most people would regard things such as swordsmanship or fancy professions that were flashy and pleasing to the eye as the strongest professions. However, Kevin begged to differ. In his opinion, the most fearsome out of all the professions was the monster tamer profession. Each person was born with a certain level of talent. This level was a set limit that could never be changed no matter what someone did. Well, that was unless you were Ren or Kevin, who were both cheats. If your talent was ranked D, then the best you could achieve throughout your whole life was becoming a D rank hero. Once you reached your talent limit, no matter how much extra time you spent training, you would never be able to improve. Kevin was all too familiar with the despair that stemmed from knowing their talent was too low. Originally, Kevin's talent was terrible. It was so bad that throughout his whole childhood he was bullied for it. While everyone around him showed incredible talent that made them stand above their peers, Kevin was born with a mediocre E-rank talent. The worst possible talent that anyone could get. At the time, his parents, who also had low talents, blamed themselves for his poor aptitude. Fortunately, Kevin's mentality was strong and he was never saddened by his low level of talent. Well, that was until that fateful day arrived. It was the day that demons managed to infiltrate his hometown and killed everyone without remorse. Because his hometown was far away from any major city, no rescue came until dawn, 5 hours after the massacre began. His parents had sacrificed their lives in order to hide him from the demons. Even though we couldn't give you a good talent, sacrificing ourselves to let you live should be enough to atone for letting you be born with a low talent that made you suffer throughout your whole childhood. With the most beautiful smile on their faces, those were the last words his parents had said to him before closing the trapdoor that led to the basement and disappearing from his life forever. To this day, he had still not gotten over that day, as it still haunts him in his dreams, like a plague that never ceases to attack the immune system. It was almost like a seed had been implanted inside of him, slowly eroding his state of mind. Kevin couldn't remember how many times he had woken up because of the nightmares, only to find his bed sheets soaked in his sweat. If not for a strange system suddenly appearing before him when he was in his most dire state, he would have never been able to survive, grow strong enough to rank first in the school ranking, and let alone enroll in the lock. He owed everything to the system. Thanks to the system, he managed to completely change himself, his body, his talent, his mentality. Everything about him changed. He went from an E-ranked talent to an SSS-ranked talent over the course of a few months due to some strange elixir the system provided him. But, what determined talent? Talent was a measure of natural aptitude. In this case, talent was asked in regards to the profession one had. A profession, like talent caps, was something that could not be chosen nor changed. Around the time of the Second Cataclysm, and humans were able to access mana, strange status windows similar to the ones that appear in games appeared in front of everyone. From then, the Age of the Awakened happened. Slowly people started familiarizing themselves with mana, through which they gained access to supernatural powers. Powers that enabled them to do things that they could have never have hoped to achieve in the past. If someone paid closely to their status window, they would notice that, right below their status, there was a small section called profession. That was your natural talent. If your status window showed spearmanship, then it meant that your aptitude towards spearmanship was amplified naturally by the status window. Meaning that if a person talented in spear arts trained in sword arts, their comprehension would be nowhere near as fast as their spear arts comprehension, which was amplified by the status window. Of course, everyone had different levels of talent in regards to their natural talent. Meaning that even if someone was talented in spear arts, their talent cap was still there. So if your talent cap was D rank, then in your lifetime you could only be a D rank hero who specialized in spear arts. In the case of Ava, the reason why Kevin believed her talent was the best was because she did not have a talent cap. Monster tamers don't have a level cap because they don't need to have one. What mattered was the monsters, not the tamer themselves. Yes, a certain amount of control was required by the tamer to control the beasts, but even then, what mattered most was the monsters. A monster tamer could tame an unlimited number of beasts regardless of their potential, making monster tamers some of the scariest opponents to face. Unfortunately, in modern society monster tamers weren't highly regarded. This was simply due to how difficult it was for them to tame a monster, as a lot of complicated steps were required. Moreover, the financial burden one would incur just to raise a monster could even cause some of the wealthiest people in the world to feel the sting. Especially if an S-rank pet was raised. They fed on monster cores. By the time they were fully grown, their daily food consumption alone could sustain a whole city for years. It was just inefficient. But to Kevin, this didn't matter because he had the system. With the system, gaining monster cores or manuals wasn't hard. All he had to do was complete a quest and he could easily earn some low-ranked cores. If his talent had been monster tamer instead of swordsmanship, he could have raised an army of S-ranked monsters with which he could have used to fight against the Demon King. "We're here." Stopping in front of 4 people from his group, Kevin ignored their looks of disdain and lightly smiled at them. "So where's the hidden task?" "4 more minutes." Checking the time that was left, I quickly dashed away from the place I was hiding. Right now my plan was, find a safe spot, rest for 3 minutes, and continue to the next spot. This was the strategy that Kevin had used when he was doing this trial, and it worked. By continuously changing my location, it made it harder for the hunter to find my exact location. Although the hunter tracked through scent, it didn't mean that it will only focus its attention on me. No, it will obviously go for the easiest prey. With around 90 students inside the map, accompanied by the limited number of hunters present in the map, the hunters who were programmed through the computer system will only go for what the computer deems to be the easiest target to hunt. If it was presented with 2 choices, prey A and prey B, the hunter will go towards the easiest target to hunt by default. If prey A, who was constantly changing location, was harder to hunt compared to prey B, who was hiding in the same spot without moving, then it will undoubtedly go for prey B. Therefore, for the past 19 minutes or so, I have been constantly changing my location. The hunters were not something I could take on. Each hunter was a precise replica of famous beasts that could be found after the second cataclysm. Each beast present ranged from rank G to rank D, which only a handful of students could fight or escape from. A G+ rank student like me cannot possibly hope to defeat a D ranked beast with my current strength. Although the sword art I practiced was extremely strong, at the end of the day my rank was only G+. Moreover, considering the fact that I had only been practicing the art for about a week, asking me to fight the beast was like asking me to kill myself. There was no way I could last longer than a couple of seconds against a D rank beast. The only option I had from the start was this one. Roaming confidently without being scared of encountering dangerous beasts was only a thing the protagonists could do. I was not on that level yet. Though I had always said that I didn't want to interact with the protagonists, it didn't mean that I didn't aspire to be like them. I do long for a peaceful life, but could you really achieve that without power? In a world where power reigns above all else? I wonder when I changed. I wasn't like this before. I used to think everything was troublesome and had no goal to strive for. I remember everything being bleak. Everything apart from my computer and the comments I got from my readers were things that I found boring and troublesome. Maybe I really was just waiting to die and rid myself of that boring life. And once I thought my life reached the end, I found myself inside my own novel. Since then my world had suddenly gone bright. I had a family, access to magic which was only something I saw in movies, and a goal to strive for. And who would have ever imagined being inside of a real virtual machine? Right, I had already decided once I discovered that I still hadn't finished the novel that I will try my best to be as strong as the protagonist or at least close to his level. Smiling to myself, I looked at the azure clear sky and the softly rustling trees. Life is good. Chapter 19, Making Money 1. Ding! A sweet melodious jingle ranged through my ears as I was about to move to my next location. Suddenly my body froze and blue text appeared in my vision. Time left midnight, congratulations on finishing the test. You will soon each be logged out from the capsule. Time's finally up. Although I technically did not do any physical training, the mental exhaustion stemming from constantly being alert and taking note of every little detail surrounding me was a first for me who had never been through such an experience in my life. It really drained a lot out of me. It felt as if I had trained intensively for 5 hours straight without any pause. Slowly the trees, the sky, the animals, everything around me started to disintegrate, turning the whole world white. Squinting my eyes, I could see the remaining students who had survived, far away in the white world. Surprisingly, there were only about 8 students near my area. Meaning that this could either mean either one of these 3 things. A. Most of the students in my zone died. B. Most of the students in my zone went to other areas. C. Not a lot of students spawned in my area. I believe the correct answer was in between the first and second options, since most of the students probably didn't know a lot about the scenario. Actually, now that I take a good look at the whole white world, including my area, there were not many students left. Although the map was huge, and I couldn't clearly see how many people remained alive, with no obstacles obstructing my vision, I could make a general deduction of how difficult the test was, basing on how many students had survived till the end. I estimated that a good 60% of the 90 students who were originally in the simulation had perished. With most of the students being at the center of the map, excluding some outliers who remained in their original area, I could more or less make an approximate deduction on how many students survived. The number of students that remained, although small, didn't surprise me as this number was within my estimation. It was approximately the same amount as I had written in the novel. Can you guys hear me? Suddenly, Professor Thibault's voice rang in my ears, prompting me to listen carefully. All right, I want to say a few things first before I let you out of the capsules. First, congratulations to you all for surviving this test. This test was specifically designed to test your adaptability in foreign environments, and how well you can survive in the wild. It's true. Although this bastard was using this test as a means to create disorder between some of the students, the test was still very good. Although he did change some things here and there so that he could create some conflict between the students, the test was indeed a good way to help students adapt to foreign environments. Actually, in my opinion, this test was better as he made this test a bit more useful for real life, as you might someday be hunted by humans too. No, it would be more accurate to say that being hunted by fellow humans, such as villains, would be the most likely scenario. By indirectly allowing students to kill each other, it raised the difficulty to another level. Because not only did you have to watch out for beasts, but you also had to look out against fellow classmates. This little detail made the training for me much more efficient. Well, that didn't mean the professor was a good guy. I was just taking advantage of his schemes to further improve myself. Though a lot of you have either survived by pure luck or through some sort of scheme, at the end of the day what really matters is not how you won, but if you won. So for those of you who made it till the end, I congratulate you. Considering how difficult this test was, having survived in this simulation is an accomplishment to be proud about. Puff up your chest and exit the capsule with your head held high. Enough with that. Next up, once you exit the capsule, on the top of the classroom you can find a large monitor where the group rankings will be displayed. Though no extra merits will be awarded this time as it's still your first week, you can still brag to your friends about getting first in your class. I feel like a lot of students would actually brag about this. Considering how in this world most of the people were proud and arrogant, for the next week or so I would expect the top 5 group members' egos to shoot through the roof. Okay, I think I've said enough. I will dismiss you from your cabin one by one, so don't panic if your view suddenly gets dark. Once again, congratulations to those of you that survived. Soon Professor Thibuit's voice disappeared and gradually students started turning into streaks of light particles that disappeared from the virtual world. As I was watching the whole process in which students slowly disappeared from the virtual world, I could finally relax my mind. Next up, I started to ponder on what to do after I exited the class. But what should I do after this? I don't think I have it in me to train any further. Maybe I could go to the swimming pool and do some resistance training?
Yeah.
I think that's the best course of action. Log out yes/no. As I was pondering about what my next course of action would be, a logout bottom appeared before me. Without needing to think any further, I pressed it. Swah! My vision suddenly turned dark, and my consciousness slipped. Phhhhhhhh. Slowly the lid of the capsule I was in opened up, releasing white steam in the process. Using the edge of the capsule as support, I slowly got out of the capsule. Man, that was seriously tiring. As soon as I emerged from my capsule, I felt a couple of stares coming from my left and right side. Turning my head left, I could see 2 individuals glaring in my direction with pure hatred. Can't really blame them. I did cut off their legs and used them as bait to get extra points. Waving at them, which further increased the intensity of their glares, I turned my head towards the other direction where a mixture of emotions could be seen from certain individuals. Park Jin-ho, William, Rose, and Edward all had weird expressions plastered on their face. It was a mixture of shock, joy, pity, and thankfulness. Wait, pity? Why were they pitying me? Then I felt it. Arnold, who was a few capsules away from where I was, glared even more fiercely than Lucas and Patrick did towards me. Turning my head left and right to make sure he was actually glaring at me, I was left dumbfounded. Why is he glaring in my direction? Is he angry that I stole his spotlight? That can't be right, right? He can't be that petty, right? Clap. Cough, cough, may I have your attention please? Fortunately, at the perfect timing, Professor Thibaut showed up, gathering everyone's attention towards himself, including Arnold's. Can't believe I was saying this, but I owed him one. All right, once again congratulations for those who have passed the test. I'll make it short since we are short on time. If you look up above, you can see your team's respective rank. Pointing towards a large monitor placed at the center of the classroom, a large table was displayed on the screen showing us the team's respective rankings. Team rank equals. Group 15. Points, 8. Result, no casualties plus 2 hidden task. Group 9. Points, 7. Result, no casualties plus 1 hidden task. Group 4. Points, 7. Result, no casualties plus 1 hidden task. Group 5. Points, 6. Result, no casualties. Group 1. Points, 5. Result, 1 casualty. Group 7. Points, 4. Result, 3 casualties plus 1 hidden task. Group 10. Points, 3. Result, 3 casualties. Group 13. Points, 3. Result, 3 casualties. Group 11. Points, 2. Result, 4 casualties. Group 8. Points, 1. Result, 5 casualties. Group 2. Points, 1. Result, 5 casualties. Group 14. Points, 0. Result, party wipe. Group 3. Points, 0. Result, party wipe. Group 6. Points, 0. Result, party wipe. Group 12. Points, 0. Result, party wipe. Equals. Sixth overall, huh? That's a rank or 2 higher than I had expected. But as I expected, the main characters had all gotten the top spots. Group 15, who ranked first, was Kevin's group. His teammates not only managed to survive, but they also managed to complete 2 hidden tasks. Emma's team placed second, with her completing one of the hidden tasks. On the other hand, Amanda placed third, and surprisingly Melissa, who teamed up with Jean, ended up fourth. The reason for their low ranking was simple. Because of Kevin, Jean couldn't get the extra point, and Melissa, who wasn't as strong as she was smart, was left helpless when trying to get the extra task. In the end, all their teammates managed to survive, but no extra points were awarded to their team. The 5th place, Group 1, was Troy's group, which although had not completed any hidden tasks, had 2 fewer casualties compared to our team. Out of the 15 groups here, 4 were wiped out. This result is much better than last year, where in contrast only had 4 groups surviving. I know some of you are shaking thinking you will be expelled from the course, but I was lying about that. I wanted to put some pressure on you so that you would have taken the test seriously. So you're all safe. Hearing this part of the speech, the students who had their team wiped let out a visible sigh of relief. Must have been stressful thinking that they had already failed a course on their first week. I thought as I sympathetically looked at them. All right, it seems that we are out of time, so you may all leave. Checking his watch, Professor Thibault smiled and dismissed us. Immediately I dashed towards my dorm. I didn't want to stay here any longer. Especially knowing that 3 individuals were looking for ways to make things harder for me. I do have to say though, moving with this tight-skinned suit was extremely challenging. If not for the fact that Arnold was distracted talking to Jean, and Lucas and Patrick were still glaring at each other, I wouldn't have been able to leave as easily as I had. Click! Entering my room, I slumped onto the clean mattress and enjoyed the momentary moment of peace. What a troublesome day. Not only was I exhausted, but I also created 3 enemies. It seems like I need to get stronger faster. At the end of the day, it all comes down to strength. Although with an increase in strength I was more likely to be exposed to danger and thus increase the chances where I'm placed in situations where I have to interact with the main characters. I can't just sit by and passively wait for my strength to increase. Not only that, but if I was to one day support my parents' guild or possibly help the protagonist fight against the Demon King, I needed to immediately think of ways to increase my strength. Fortunately, I had already come up with a rough plan. That is, with the knowledge I have, as the author of the novel. I can take advantage of future events to make some money through stocks. Since my parents from this world weren't filthy rich, the only way I could make money was through the use of stocks. Unlike Jean, Amanda, or Melissa, whose parents can provide them with the best training facilities and potions, I, a mob that wasn't supposed to appear in the story, have the only option of using my knowledge to make money to increase my strength. In a sense, this was my cheat ability. With money, I could essentially catapult my strength to reach new heights. In order to increase my stats, I could resort to consuming potions, and if I wanted to increase my strength even further, I could even go as far as purchasing artifacts. Artifacts were objects that could be found inside of dungeons or could be created by master blacksmiths and were essentially weapons that had special effects imbued into them. They ranged from the simplest objects such as a coffee mug to weapons and cars. Like most things, the better the grade, the more expensive they were. Fortunately for me, I knew a place where I could get good artifacts for a cheap price. Thinking of all the money I would need to use to purchase potions and artifacts, I could feel my head throbbing. Letting out a sigh and taking out a small book from my bottom drawer, I quickly went through the contents. The book I was holding had details on all the future events that would happen in the future. Starting from when Kevin entered the academy to when he was about to face the Demon King. Since I was the author of the novel, I could confidently say that I did not miss anything when writing the future events. From minor to major events, this book should have everything. Unless something deviated from the story which I had written, I should be able to use this book as a reference for things that will happen in the future. Now what should I use? Flipping through the pages, I quickly stopped at a certain event. C.B. Pharmaceuticals Crash. Chapter 20, Making Money, 2. C.B. Pharmaceuticals Stock Crash. Matching the timing and potential payoff that I could make from exploiting this information, I decisively started making preparations. First things first, opening my watch, I checked my bank account. Student, Ren Dover. Age, 16. Balance, 9.897 U. Withdraw deposit. A little bit under 10,000 U. Should be about enough, but... Pondering for a little bit, I sighed and organized my thoughts. A month after the academy had officially started, Tobias Church, head researcher of C.B. Pharmaceuticals, was found dead in his high-security apartment complex. All the news agencies and big guilds were shocked by the news and immediately reported it to the media and their respective guild members. The news spread fast, reaching all major figures' ears in the span of minutes. It was the first high-profile assassination that had occurred in decades, with many starting to fear for their lives as a result of this accident. Tobias Church, a forefront name in the potion-making industry, is found dead in his home with one slit on the throat. Forensic evidence indicated that he was assassinated by Rank 37, Silent Creeper, of the villain list. This can be inferred from the clean slit on Mr. Church's throat, which is a signature assassination method adopted by Rank 37, Silent Creeper. Later, when investigators were investigating the scene, another stunning revelation was discovered. The recipe for the body-enhancing potion was found missing. This revelation shocked the pharmaceutical industry. Potion recipes were an alchemist's biggest secret. Each potion, such as the body-enhancing potion, had various variations to them. The variations occurred depending on the alchemist who was making the potion. Some, being far more effective than the ones available on the market, while others performing far worse than the ones available on the market. The better performing ones would be sold to distinguished buyers, while the worse performing ones will be either discarded or illegally traded in the black market. In the case of Tobias Church, because he was a highly acclaimed alchemist, his body enhancement potion, which only he knew the recipe of, was considered to be the best in the market. As C.B. Pharmaceuticals' head researcher, he had every right to decide who to sell and who not to sell the potion to. In this case, his body enhancement potion were each sold to the high-ranking guilds who needed it for when they needed to perform a raid. With him gone, suddenly a gap in the body enhancement potion market appeared. The result of Tobias Church's death had a bigger impact than what people had predicted. Especially on C.B. Pharmaceuticals, the #1 pharmaceutical company in the human domain. 2 hours after Tobias Church's death was announced, C.B. Pharmaceuticals stock plummeted by 17%, falling from 123.71 U to 102.68 U. Later that evening, 5 hours after the first plummet, C.B. stock further plummeted by a further 43%, reaching 58.53 U. Due to investors dumping the stock to try to mitigate their losses, the stock further fell until it stabilized at 21.65 U. A staggering 82% stock decline. The result of such decline almost caused C.B. Pharmaceuticals to file for bankruptcy. If not for the fact that they had a lot of liquid assets available to them due to the nature of their business, they would have most likely have crumbled. In the wake of C.B. historical downfall, W.V. Pharmaceuticals, the second best pharmaceutical company behind C.B., finds its stock increasing dramatically. For a solid week, it found its stock constantly increasing, rising from 58.93 U at the beginning of the week, to 111.45 U by the end of the week. A dramatic 89.12% rise. In short, I could use this incident, which will happen in about 3 weeks' time, to make it rich. I will both short C.B. and buy W.V. stock. Meaning that I will bet on both C.B. stock falling, and bet on W.V. stock increasing. Thanks to the information I have, as a cheat, I should be able to make a good amount of cash. Actually, with my limited funding of approximately 10,000 U, although I would be able to make quite a bit of money, it would still not be enough to pay for the things I needed. In short, what I needed was a quick way to make some quick cash so that I could invest as much money as possible in this event. The more money I get before the event happens, the better. Pondering for a while, I came up with 3 options to solve my short-term money problem. A. Sign up for a mercenary job. B. Get a job. C. Go to a dungeon. The first 2 options were a no-go. First, being a mercenary. With my current strength and rank, I would at best be a miscellaneous mercenary. To put it bluntly, a mercenary who took care of the tasks that most mercenaries wouldn't want to take. Like looking for a missing pet, or taking care of some small beasts that had infiltrated the city. The income was quite poor, and the effort in proportion to the income paid was not worth it. The second option, get a job, was also undesirable, as I was still a student and thus couldn't work full-time. Moreover, I was only looking for a short-term job, which makes finding a job that pays a substantial amount impossible to find. At least not with my current set of skills. That leaves me with one last option. Entering a dungeon. A dungeon was essentially a pocket dimension that led to a small section of the demon world. As the demons invaded the world, cracks appeared all over the world as a result of the instability created by the sudden influx of mana. This resulted in mini pocket dimensions that led to the demon world being created. Because of the instability of the crack, depending on the rank of the dungeon, only those below a certain level can enter. For example, a B rank dungeon can only be accessible for those who are B or lower rank. If an A rank were to enter the dungeon, it would immediately break and injure the person who had entered. The same went for the monsters that could be found inside. Therefore, dungeons were excellent places to train. Moreover, since the demon world was riddled with wars, artifacts from ancient wars could be found if someone was lucky enough. However, the most attractive resource that could be found inside of a dungeon were not artifacts but monster cores. A core was a condensed source of energy, which revolutionized the world of today. By implementing cores and replacing them as a source of energy, humanity was able to get rid of unclean energy. Not only were cores much more efficient than any other sources of energy, but they also didn't produce any greenhouse gases. This shocking discovery sent the world into a frenzy, as not only did they not produce pollution, but later it was shown that just a single G-rank core could power a whole city for 10 minutes. We are talking about a city with a population of millions inside. The amount of energy a single core contained was staggering. Cores aside, the bodies of the demons and monsters inside of the dungeon could also be sold for a substantial price, which meant that dungeons were essentially gold mines for those who were looking to make some quick cash. Using monster corpses, humanity's study on biology improved by leaps and bounds. Incurable diseases became something of the past, and slowly biology divided into a new branch called alchemy, where they specialized in the creation of potions. Dungeons certainly presented people with many opportunities to change their life, but that comes along with a great price. Death. The mortality rate of dungeons was extremely high, as no one could predict what could happen once you entered inside. Therefore, the central government put a strict restriction on dungeons and only allowed those who had a registered license to enter. But of course, that didn't impede some unscrupulous dealers to take advantage of the government restricting dungeons to create an illegal dungeon business. Which was exactly where I was planning to go. If you're wondering why I was not using my knowledge to find a dungeon that has not been discovered yet, it's because it actually doesn't exist. Well, at least not for any dungeon below D rank. In my novel, Kevin only entered dungeons in the later half of his first year. And his stats were around C to D plus rank, which meant that D rank dungeons weren't that useful for him. Me on the other hand, who was only G+, could only enter at best an F-rank dungeon. Checking out my stats, I was more or less pleased with my week's progress. Status . Name, Ren Dover. Rank, G+. Strength, F. Agility, F. Stamina, F. Intelligence, G+. Mana capacity, G+. Luck, E. Charm, G. Profession, swordsmanship LVL.1. Although it may not seem like much, suddenly raising half of my stats to F was a considerable achievement. Raising stats could be considered the most gruesome task possible. There were only 3 methods to raise your stats. 1. Consume potions. 2. Train diligently. 3. Consume some natural treasure E.G, fruit that had the seed of limit inside. In short, for someone like me who could only train diligently, raising my stats without external help could be considered a huge accomplishment. Looking more confident than ever, I made a rough note of tomorrow's plan and headed to the swimming pool. It's time to train. Heading towards the training center, I packed my swimming suit and left my dorm. As I was heading towards the swimming pool, I started to think about the main storyline. The novel essentially began with Kevin preparing himself to enroll in the lock. Kevin's rise to fame was essentially your typical banal protagonist story, where his parents died in the past and he goes on this long harsh journey to avenge them. Through a series of events, he was granted a cheat item and through that he became peerless. I was starting to get a better understanding of why my readers started hating my novel. Apart from the main concepts, such as the general layout of the world, and the key ideas behind how the demons and villains operate. You could say everything else was rather cliché, as almost all other novels out there share a similar plotline to my story. The story so far goes like this. One day as Kevin was exploring an undisclosed dungeon, he was suddenly met with an accident and almost dies. Trapped in the dungeon for weeks, with his body full of injuries, he barely stays alive by rationing the remaining food he brought with him before entering the dungeon. Just as he was about to die, a miraculous encounter that changed his life appeared. He was granted a system. A more advanced interface than the current status window that everyone had available. A status window, which every human in the world had, be it young or old, was a sort of game interface that showed a user's stats. It first appeared as soon as the demons invaded the world, and the source of origin was still unknown to this day, but what was known about the status window was that it allowed the user to see their own stats as well as that of artifacts. The system, on the other hand, was a more advanced version of a status window. Not only did it grant the user the ability to check their status, but it also granted quests and tasks which upon completion will award the user with status points and other fantastic rewards. With this system, Kevin found himself shedding of his old timid self and truly started rising like a phoenix. A year after he was granted the system, he enrolls into the lock and proceeds to stun the examiners with his overwhelming talent and charisma, leading him into becoming the top student of the year, officially starting the Academy arc. The Academy arc starts with Kevin getting to know the other protagonists, Jean, Melissa, Amanda, and Emma, slowly building a rival-friend relationship. Then the first minor event of the Academy arc, the VR segment, starts, and it was where Kevin managed to successfully complete 2 hidden tasks, once again shocking everyone including his teachers. After the VR segment, the first major event of the Academy arc officially begins. During his elective, Kevin gets in conflict with a senior student, which starts a long series of conflicts with the senior years. You could already imagine how the conflict began. You first year don't get cocky because your year performed better than our year in the VR test. We can still wipe the floor with scrubs like you. Seriously, how bad of a writer was I? It was only after experiencing my story from a first-person perspective that I began to realize how bad of a writer I was. Not only did I overuse generic cliché-like scenarios, but even future events become easily predictable. Well, in short, this event gets so blown out of proportion that it soon becomes a full-blown conflict between juniors